My name is Martha Wilson, I'm 67, and on my son's 45th birthday, he looked me in the eye and sneered, "The best gift you could give me is to disappear from my life." I didn't argue. I simply took back what was mine. Hello, everyone. I'm sharing my story with you today, and I hope it resonates. Before I dive in, I'm curious, where are you all tuning in from? What time is it for you right now? Drop a comment below, I'd love to know. The scent of lemon and vanilla filled my kitchen, a comforting aroma that always reminded me of Robert's childhood. His 45th birthday. 45 years. It felt like yesterday I was holding him, a tiny bundle in my arms, promising him the world. I carefully smoothed the buttercream, adding the final swirl to his favorite lemon cake. Each stroke was a memory, his laughter echoing through the house, his scraped knees that I'd kiss better, the countless nights I spent hunched over textbooks, helping him with homework after my husband, Arthur, passed away too soon. Arthur. My dear Arthur. He died when Robert was just 5, leaving me a young widow with a mountain of grief and a small boy to raise. I sacrificed everything. My dreams of going back to art school, my burgeoning career aspirations as a textile designer. I took on extra sewing jobs, cleaned houses, did anything and everything to keep food on the table and make sure Robert had what he needed. His college fund was my life's mission, meticulously saved, penny by penny, through years of frugal living and hard work. I wanted him to have the opportunities one never had, a clear path to success. And he did. He went to a good university, earned a degree in business, secured a respectable salary position at a financial firm, and married Sandra, a woman I initially thought was charming and intelligent. Lately, though, things had felt off. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. Little things, at first. A new paint color on the living room wall that I hadn't chosen, a different set of curtains in my own bedroom. Robert and Sandra would wave it off with a dismissive hand gesture and a saccharine smile. "Oh, Mom, we just thought it would brighten the place up for you. You know, give it a fresh look." Or, "It's so hard for you to manage, dear, we just wanted to help. You shouldn't have to worry about these things at your age." I'd nod, feeling a strange mix of gratitude and a growing, unsettling unease. My home, this house Arthur and I had built together, brick by brick, memory by memory, felt like it was slowly, subtly, slipping away from me. Photos of Arthur and me, cherished family heirlooms, seemed to disappear from their usual spots, replaced by their modern, minimalist decor. My grandmother's antique porcelain doll, a treasured possession, was nowhere to be found. I tried to ignore the knot that tightened in my stomach. They meant well, right? They were just trying to help their old mother. That's what I kept telling myself. But the day of Robert's birthday, the unease was a thick, suffocating cloud that pressed down on me. When they arrived, Robert hugged me quickly, almost perfunctorily, his cheek brushing mine without warmth. Sandra, as usual, gave me a tight, polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. Their 2 children, Sarah and Alex, usually so boisterous and eager for Grandma's cookies, seemed subdued. Sarah, my eldest grandchild, a sensitive girl of 15 with Arthur's kind eyes, kept glancing at me with worried, almost fearful, glances. Alex, just 10, clung to Sandra's leg, unusually quiet, avoiding eye contact. Even the air in the house felt heavy, charged with an unspoken tension. I brought out the cake, candles flickering, illuminating Robert's face. He watched me, his expression unreadable, a strange, almost calculating glint in his eyes. I waited for his usual cheerful thanks, the familiar sparkle in his eye that used to remind me so much of Arthur. Instead, he took a deep, deliberate breath, and a sneer twisted his lips, distorting his features into something I barely recognized. "Mom," he said, his voice dripping with an almost clinical detachment, devoid of any warmth or affection. "You know, this cake, it's fine. It's exactly how I remember it. But honestly, the best gift you could give me on my birthday, the absolute best gift, would be if you just disappeared from my life." The words hit me like a physical blow, a punch to the gut that stole my breath. The cake, still warm from the oven, slipped from my trembling hands, my fingers suddenly numb. It landed with a sickening splat on the polished hardwood floor, buttercream and lemon curd splattering like shattered dreams, a bright yellow mess against the dark wood. My heart pounded in my chest, a frantic bird trapped in a cage, beating against my ribs. Disappeared? My own son. The boy I had given everything for. The child I had loved unconditionally. I couldn't speak. My throat constricted, choked by a sudden, overwhelming wave of pain, disbelief, and a searing sense of betrayal. Sandra didn't react, just gave me a smug, almost triumphant look, a small, knowing smirk playing on her lips. Robert just shrugged, as if he'd just stated the most obvious, unremarkable fact in the world. Sarah, however, gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. Alex whimpered, burying his face in Sandra's skirt, as if trying to hide from the harshness of the moment. I simply stood there, staring at the ruined cake, then at Robert's cold, indifferent face. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The tears didn't come. They were held back by a new, unfamiliar sensation, a cold, hard ember that ignited in my gut, burning away the pain and replacing it with a fierce, unyielding resolve. Disappeared? No. I wouldn't disappear. I would reclaim. Robert, seemingly unfazed by my silence or the mess, quickly ushered his family away from the sticky disaster. "Don't worry about it, Mom," he said, already pulling out his phone, his voice dismissive. "We'll get someone to clean it up. We're actually going out for dinner now. Something more modern. You know, for my promotion celebration." He gave a dismissive wave towards the cake, as if it were an insignificant trifle. They left, a whirlwind of designer clothes and detached smiles, their laughter echoing from the driveway, leaving me alone in the once warm kitchen, now cold and silent, the scent of lemon cake replaced by the bitter tang of betrayal. Later that evening, after I'd mechanically cleaned up the sticky mess, my hands still trembling, a gnawing suspicion started to consume me. It wasn't just the words, it was the way they'd been so casual about it, almost as if it had been rehearsed, planned. The small changes in the house, the disappearing photos, the strange new furniture. It all clicked into place, forming a disturbing pattern. My mind raced, connecting dots I had previously ignored or rationalized away. I walked through my house, the house Arthur and I had poured our lives into, the house that was meant to be my sanctuary. Every corner held a memory. The antique grandfather clock in the hallway, a cherished wedding gift from Arthur's parents, its steady tick-tock a comforting rhythm for decades. Now, the grandfather clock was gone, replaced by a sleek, black sculpture that looked utterly out of place. The faded wallpaper in the den where Robert used to build blanket forts, now painted a stark, impersonal gray. My favorite armchair, where I used to read for hours, was gone, replaced by a stiff, modern sofa. I went to my bedroom, a sanctuary that felt increasingly alien. My small, ornate jewelry box, a delicate silver piece, a gift from Arthur on our 10th anniversary, was missing from my dresser. In its place was a bland, modern box that wasn't mine, filled with cheap, costume jewelry. My breath hitched. This wasn't just about disrespect, this was about something far more sinister. This was about erasure. I remembered my small, personal safe, hidden behind a loose brick in the fireplace. It contained my will, Arthur's old pocket watch, his most treasured possession, and most importantly, my original bank statements, property deeds, and my late husband's life insurance policy. I knelt, my hands trembling as I felt for the loose brick. It pulled away easily. I reached in. Empty. My heart plummeted, a lead weight in my chest. My safe was empty. All my crucial documents, gone. My mind raced, frantically trying to piece together the timeline. How? When? A cold dread seeped into my bones, chilling me to the core. This wasn't just a disrespectful son, this was a calculated, systematic takeover. I thought back to Robert's easy access to my house, his casual remarks about helping me with my finances, his insistence on handling my bills. A horrifying truth began to dawn on me. My own son, and his wife, were systematically stealing my life from under my nose, piece by agonizing piece. I slumped against the cold brick, tears finally blurring my vision, hot and stinging. The pain was immense, not just for the loss of my belongings, but for the profound betrayal. This wasn't just about money or property, it was about my identity, my very existence, being erased. I thought of Arthur, how he would have protected me, how he would have roared with indignation at this injustice. But he wasn't here. I was alone. Utterly, terribly alone. Or was I? A tiny, stubborn spark ignited within me, a flicker of defiance in the vast darkness of my despair. The memory of Robert's sneer. Disappear. No. Not me. I wouldn't disappear. I would fight. But where to start? I felt overwhelmed, lost, a small boat adrift in a vast, stormy ocean. Then, a name surfaced from the depths of my memory. I remembered a casual conversation a few weeks ago at the grocery store. My neighbor, Mrs. Bennett, a sweet, soft-spoken woman who had lost her own husband years ago, had mentioned her own struggles after her husband passed. She'd mentioned a lawyer who had helped her navigate some difficult family issues. Elizabeth Thorne, she'd said, her voice full of quiet admiration. A real straight shooter. She doesn't let anyone push her clients around. The name echoed in my mind, a beacon in the fog. I took a deep, shaky breath, pushing myself up from the cold floor. My hands were still trembling, but my resolve was firm. This was no longer just about pain. It was about survival. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, my very essence. It was about Martha. The morning after Robert's birthday, I woke with a new kind of clarity. The grief and shock were still there, a dull ache in my chest, but beneath them, a hard, unyielding layer of determination had formed. I wasn't just hurt, I was furious. This wasn't about a son's callous words, it was about an elaborate, cold-blooded scheme to strip me of everything I had worked for, everything Arthur and I had built. I pulled out my old, worn address book, its pages thin from years of use. My fingers, still slightly tremulous, traced the familiar names until I found Mrs. Bennett's number. I dialed, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Mrs. Bennett answered on the third ring, her voice gentle and warm as always. I explained, haltingly at first, my voice catching in my throat, about the missing documents, the insidious changes in the house, Robert's cruel words. I poured out my fears, my suspicions, the profound sense of betrayal. She listened patiently, without interruption, her silence more comforting than any immediate words could have been. "Martha, dear," she said, her voice full of quiet empathy, when I finally ran out of breath. "I know exactly what you're going through. After my George passed, my nephew, bless his heart, tried something similar. He thought I was frail, that I wouldn't notice. But I did. And you will too. You need to protect yourself. Elizabeth Thorne is a wonderful lawyer. She specializes in family estate issues, and she's a force of nature. I'll give you her number right now." Within the hour, Mrs. Bennett called me back with Elizabeth Thorne's contact information, urging me to make an appointment immediately. Her steady, unwavering voice was a lifeline, pulling me back from the brink of despair. I hung up, took a deep breath that felt like it filled my lungs for the first time in days, and dialed. A crisp, professional voice answered, the receptionist at Thorne and Associates. I explained briefly that I needed to discuss a sensitive family legal matter. An appointment was set for the following morning. Walking into Elizabeth Thorne's office felt like stepping into a different world, a sanctuary of order and competence. The waiting room was hushed, the furniture tasteful, not ostentatious, but solid and reassuring. Elizabeth Thorne herself was exactly as Mrs. Bennett described, sharp, professional, with piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through me, assessing, understanding. She was younger than I expected, perhaps in her late 40s, but her aura radiated competence and quiet strength. I sat across from her, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, and began to tell my story. Every painful detail. The paint colors, the missing photos, the empty safe, Robert's cruel words, Sandra's chilling smirk. I showed her my old bank statements, the ones I had wisely kept separate in a small, hidden file in my old sewing box, and pointed out the inexplicable large withdrawals and transfers that had started appearing months ago, disguised as home improvement or family expenses. "And this," I said, my voice trembling as I pulled out the small, crinkled note Sarah had left in the butterfly clip. "My granddaughter, she's a smart girl. She's worried about her parents doing something wrong. She knew something was off." Elizabeth listened intently, taking meticulous notes, her expression unreadable, her pen scratching softly on the pad. When I finished, the silence stretched, heavy with the weight of my words. She leaned back in her chair, a thoughtful, almost grim look on her face. "Mrs. Wilson," she finally said, her voice calm and measured, cutting through the silence like a sharp blade. "What you've described is a clear pattern of elder financial abuse and potentially criminal fraud. The forged signatures, the unauthorized access to your accounts, the attempts to manipulate you into signing over your property, this is extremely serious. And unfortunately, far too common." A wave of relief washed over me, mixed with a renewed surge of anger. "So, there's something I can do? I'm not crazy?" "Absolutely not crazy, Mrs. Wilson," she affirmed, a rare, small smile touching her lips. "And absolutely, there's something we can do. First, we need to immediately freeze all your bank accounts and credit lines. We'll send cease and desist letters to Robert and Sandra regarding any unauthorized access to your property. Then, we'll begin the process of legally reclaiming control of your home and all your assets. We'll also need to investigate these forged signatures more thoroughly, possibly involving forensic document examiners." She outlined a detailed plan of action, a step-by-step roadmap through the intimidating legal landscape. The legal terminology was a bit overwhelming, but her confidence was contagious, a steady hand guiding me through the fog. I felt a flicker of hope, a sense of power returning to me, a tiny ember of defiance growing into a small flame. This wasn't just about proving Robert and Sandra wrong, it was about taking my life back. My inheritance, my hard-earned savings, my home, everything Arthur and I had built was being threatened. I needed to protect it, not just for myself, but for Arthur's memory, for the legacy we had created. "One more thing, Mrs. Wilson," Elizabeth said, her eyes softening slightly, a hint of genuine concern in their depths. "This will be emotionally taxing. Robert and Sandra will likely escalate their tactics. They might try to turn other family members against you, or even use your grandchildren as leverage. Be prepared for that." Her words sent a chill down my spine. The thought of losing Sarah and Alex, my precious grandchildren, was unbearable. But then I remembered Robert's sneer, his casual cruelty, his threat. He had already started using them. He had already tried to separate me from them. I had to fight, not just for myself, but for the principle of what was right, for the integrity of my family, even if it meant tearing it apart first to rebuild it. Over the next few weeks, I followed Elizabeth's instructions precisely. Freezing my accounts was the first, immediate step. The bank, after some initial confusion and a few phone calls to Elizabeth's office, complied once Elizabeth sent their formal legal notification. The immediate effect was a flurry of angry, panicked calls and texts from Robert and Sandra. "Mom, what are you doing? Our cards are being declined. This is insane. We needed that money for Alex's school trip." Robert yelled into the phone, his voice laced with a mixture of disbelief and fury. "You're completely losing it, Martha. How are we supposed to pay for things if you freeze your accounts? We have bills, a mortgage. This is destroying our lives." Sandra shrieked, her voice shrill with panic, devoid of any pretense of concern for me. I remained calm, a new strength settling over me. "My accounts are my business, Robert," I told him, my voice steady despite my trembling hands. "And my property is my property. You have no right to either." Their rage escalated, their voices growing louder, more desperate. "You'll regret this, Mom. You'll never see your grandchildren again. We'll make sure of it. We'll get custody if we have to." Robert threatened, his voice turning icy, venomous. That threat pierced me deeply, a direct hit to my most vulnerable spot. For a moment, my resolve wavered. My grandchildren, could I really risk losing them? The thought of life without Sarah's gentle hugs, Alex's innocent questions, was unbearable. But then, Elizabeth's words echoed in my mind, they might use your grandchildren as leverage. This was exactly what she warned me about. This was manipulation, pure and simple. My anger, cold and sharp, solidified. They were using the children as pawns in their cruel game. I wouldn't let them win. Meanwhile, Elizabeth and her team were diligently working. They confirmed the forged signatures on several key documents, including an attempt to modify my will to make Robert the sole beneficiary, overriding Arthur's original provisions that included specific bequests to charities and other family members. They found irrefutable evidence of large sums transferred out of my college fund savings for Robert, money I had painstakingly saved for his education, supposedly for his children's education, but records showed no corresponding tuition payments or legitimate expenses. This was clear theft, a calculated betrayal of my life's work. One afternoon, while meticulously cleaning out Arthur's old study, a room I hadn't touched much since his passing, I stumbled upon a small, wooden box hidden in a secret compartment behind a loose panel in his antique desk. It wasn't the safe Robert had emptied. This was an older, more personal hiding spot, known only to Arthur and me. Inside, wrapped in a faded silk handkerchief, was a small, rusted key. Beneath it, a deed. A deed to a small parcel of land, undeveloped, a few acres outside of town, with Arthur's name on it, and clearly stating for Martha, my beloved wife. It was a tiny piece of land, purchased decades ago, almost forgotten, and certainly never mentioned to Robert. Arthur had bought it as a future investment, a quiet place for us perhaps, a legacy just for me, separate from our main assets. Robert and Sandra knew nothing of it. My heart swelled. This was a true inheritance, a secret gift from Arthur, a tangible piece of his enduring love, and it was entirely mine. A secret asset, a tiny victory. This could be incredibly useful, a hidden ace up my sleeve. I immediately called Elizabeth, my voice hushed with excitement. I found something, I told her. A piece of property Robert and Sandra don't know about. It was Arthur's secret gift to me. She listened, a rare hint of surprise in her voice. Excellent, Mrs. Wilson. This could be a significant advantage. It shows a clear pattern of your independent assets, separate from what they believed was solely part of the main estate. Word of my actions, of course, began to spread like wildfire through the family grapevine. Robert and Sandra were masters of gossip and manipulation. My sister, Susan, called me, her voice laced with feigned concern, but also a strange undertone of reproach, almost accusation. Martha, what's going on? Robert and Sandra say you're acting very strangely. They're worried about your mental health. They say you're being irrational, that you're accusing them of terrible things. I felt a pang of disappointment, a sharp jab of pain. Susan, my own sister, was falling for their lies, or worse, actively participating. Susan, I said, my voice firm, unwavering. I am perfectly fine. Robert and Sandra are trying to steal my home and my money. That's what's going on. They're committing fraud. A long, uncomfortable silence stretched between us. Then, Susan's voice, colder now, devoid of its initial feigned sympathy. Martha, you're being irrational. Robert only wants what's best for you. Don't let a lawyer ruin our family. Think of the children. This will be a messy divorce of the family. Her words stung, a fresh wound. It was clear now. Susan was compromised, bought off, or simply too weak to stand up to Robert and Sandra. I didn't know why, but I could feel it. She wasn't on my side. This was another painful betrayal, adding to the growing list. My resolve hardened further. The fight for my life, for my very identity, for Arthur's legacy, had officially begun. I was no longer just a victim, I was a warrior. The betrayal from my own sister, Susan, was a bitter pill to swallow. It felt like another brick in the wall of isolation Robert and Sandra were meticulously building around me. They were relentless, spreading insidious rumors throughout the family and our small community, twisting facts, painting me as a confused, irrational old woman suffering from early-onset dementia. Some relatives stopped calling altogether, their silence a stark condemnation. Others gave me pitying, uncomfortable looks when I saw them at the grocery store or at church, their eyes filled with a mixture of awkwardness and judgment. It hurt, deeply, to be ostracized by those I had loved and trusted. But the core of my being, fortified by Elizabeth's unwavering guidance and my newfound determination, held firm. I would not let them define me. I would not let them break me. It was during this tumultuous time that Mrs. Bennet became my unwavering anchor. She was a quiet, unassuming woman, a widow herself, but her wisdom ran deep, honed by years of quiet observation and personal resilience. She'd stop by almost daily, bringing freshly baked cookies, a small casserole, or a vibrant bouquet of flowers from her meticulously tended garden. She didn't pry, didn't offer unsolicited advice, she just listened. And sometimes, often, that was all I needed, a compassionate ear, a silent presence that understood without judgment. One particularly lonely afternoon, after another terse, accusatory call from a distant cousin who had clearly been influenced by Robert and Sandra's poisonous narratives, I found a small, handwritten envelope tucked under my front door. It was from Mrs. Bennet. Her elegant, looping script was instantly recognizable. Her note was simple, yet it resonated deeply within my wounded soul. Dear Martha, the path you walk is not easy, but it is true. I, too, knew what it was like to feel abandoned by those you love, to have your sacrifices dismissed, your very existence questioned. My own nephew, after George passed, tried to take advantage of me, just as yours are doing. He thought I was frail, that I wouldn't notice his machinations. But I did. And you will too. Sometimes, dear Martha, it is the quiet ones, the ones underestimated, who possess the greatest strength. Don't let their words define your worth. Your spirit is a garden, and it will bloom again, more beautiful and resilient than ever. With deepest respect and unwavering support, Agnes Bennet. Her words were a balm to my raw, aching soul. My spirit is a garden. That phrase stuck with me, echoing in my mind like a gentle melody. For so long, my garden had been overgrown with weeds of resentment, regret, and the suffocating vines of others' expectations. It was time to clear them out, to cultivate something new. I remembered my old art supplies, tucked away in a dusty trunk in the attic for decades. A sturdy wooden easel, a worn leather case filled with charcoal pencils, a stack of blank canvases, still pristine and waiting. My dream of going to art school, shelved the moment Arthur died, replaced by the relentless demands of single motherhood. Now, that dream, dormant for so long, began to stir, a tiny sapling pushing through the hardened earth. I enrolled in an art class at the local community center. The first day, I was nervous, my hands clumsy with the charcoal, my strokes hesitant. The other students, mostly women my age, seemed so confident, their easels filled with vibrant landscapes and intricate still lives. My art teacher, Ms. Evans, was a vibrant woman with kind eyes, a cascade of silver hair, and boundless energy. She moved among us, offering gentle critiques and enthusiastic encouragement. She saw something in my hesitant strokes, something beyond the initial awkwardness. Martha, she said one day, looking at my tentative sketch of an old oak tree, its branches gnarled and ancient. There's so much life in this. So much history. So much resilience. Don't be afraid to let it show. Let your hand follow your heart. Her words were an encouragement, not just for my art, but for my life. In that class, surrounded by the comforting scent of turpentine and the quiet scratching of pencils on canvas, I found a new sense of purpose, a quiet joy that had been missing for decades. It was a place where I was just Martha, the artist, not Martha, the grieving widow or the beleaguered mother. I started connecting with other women in the class, sharing laughter, stories, and the quiet camaraderie of creation. Some of them, I discovered, had similar stories of difficult family dynamics, of having to reclaim their own space and identity later in life. We found strength in each other, a silent sisterhood of survivors. Meanwhile, Elizabeth Thorne was tirelessly building our case. We meticulously gathered every piece of evidence, detailed bank statements, irrefutable proof of forged documents, the deed to the secret land Arthur had left me. Each piece was a puzzle part, slowly forming a damning picture. The audio recording from Alex's old phone, however, became our smoking gun, the undeniable proof that would shatter Robert and Sandra's carefully constructed lies. One afternoon, Sarah and Alex came to visit. Sarah, as usual, was quiet, her eyes darting nervously, her small hand often reaching out to touch my arm reassuringly. Alex, however, was unusually subdued, his usual boisterous energy replaced by a quiet, almost fearful demeanor. As they were leaving, Alex, in a rare moment of clumsiness, accidentally dropped his old, scratched-up cell phone under my armchair. He quickly picked it up, but not before I saw a small, flashing light on the screen, indicating a recording was in progress. He mumbled an apology and hurried out, his face flushed. Later that evening, after they'd left, a strange feeling prompted me to check under the armchair out of curiosity. There it was. Alex's old phone, tucked away, almost as if it had been deliberately placed there. It was still on. I picked it up, and my thumb accidentally brushed the screen. A voice memo app was open, and a recording began to play. It was Robert's voice, hushed but furious, tinged with desperation. Already signed, Sandra. I forged her signature on the power of attorney last month. She'll never know. She's too out of it. And that little piece of land? We'll just quietly transfer it over, sell it off. She's too old to remember that. It's just a formality now. The house, the money, everything. It's all ours. We can finally pay off that divorce settlement and get you that promotion you've been wanting. Sandra's voice, smug and sharp, chimed in, a chillingly cold edge to her tone. Good. And make sure Mom's funeral arrangements are simple. Nothing extravagant. We don't want any unnecessary expenses. We need that inheritance to cover our own debts and to finally get us that new house. No fuss, no drama. Just quick and clean. My blood ran cold, turning to ice in my veins. Funeral arrangements? Inheritance? They weren't just planning to take my money and my house, they were discussing my death as if it were a future business transaction, a mere inconvenience to be handled efficiently. Alex's innocent clumsiness, his brave little act, had just handed me the undeniable, damning proof. This wasn't just a simple case of elder abuse, it was a deeply disturbing, premeditated scheme, a cold-blooded plot to erase me entirely. This was another twist in the knife, but this time, it sharpened my resolve to a razor's edge. I immediately called Elizabeth, my hands shaking, but my voice steady. I have it, I said, my voice barely a whisper, thick with emotion. The proof. Everything. I played the recording for her over the phone, holding the receiver tightly to my ear. Elizabeth's silence on the other end was more powerful than any exclamation. It was the silence of a professional recognizing the gravity of the situation. Mrs. Wilson, she finally said, her voice grim, but with a new note of triumph, this changes everything. This is criminal. This is premeditated. We have them. The very next day, a formal summons arrived for Robert and Sandra. They had filed a lawsuit demanding I transfer the ownership of my home to them, citing my incapacity and their supposed care for me. They also announced a family gathering at my house, inviting key family members, a few distant relatives, and even some local community figures, ostensibly to discuss my future care and transparently manage my assets. It was a thinly veiled attempt to legitimize their takeover in front of everyone, to make their theft appear as a benevolent, necessary act. But I knew better. This wasn't a family gathering. This was their public execution of my life, their final attempt to bury me. And I was ready. I had my lawyer. I had my evidence. And I had the newfound strength of Martha, the artist, the survivor, the woman who would no longer disappear. Elizabeth, I told her, my voice clear and steady, I want to be there. And I want everyone to hear the truth. Every single word. The day of the gathering was set. It was time for the storm to break. The day of the family gathering dawned crisp and clear, a cruel contrast to the storm brewing inside me. The morning sun streamed through my living room windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, a stark reminder of the calm before the tempest. Robert and Sandra had meticulously arranged my living room to resemble a formal meeting space, moving my comfortable armchairs and sofas to the periphery, replacing them with rows of stiff, rented chairs. They had even brought in a large projector and screen, likely to display falsified financial documents or photos implying my infirmity, their carefully crafted narrative. Family members began to trickle in, their faces a mixture of curiosity, discomfort, and thinly veiled judgment. Some looked uncomfortable, avoiding my gaze, clearly having heard Robert and Sandra's fabricated stories about my declining health and irrational behavior. Others whispered in hushed tones, their eyes darting towards me, then towards Robert and Sandra, trying to gauge the situation. My sister, Susan, arrived early, her face drawn and pale, avoiding my gaze completely. She sat in a back corner, almost trying to disappear. Robert and Sandra, dressed impeccably, stood at the front of the room, exuding a false air of authority and concern. Robert, ever the smooth talker, began his address, his voice resonating with an unctuous sincerity that grated on my ears. "Thank you all for coming," he started, a practiced smile plastered on his face. "As you know, Mom has been struggling lately. Her health, her memory. Sandra and I have been doing our best to care for her, to manage her affairs, to ensure her well-being in her golden years." Sandra chimed in, her voice dripping with feigned sympathy, a perfect echo of Robert's false concern. "It's been a very difficult time for us. We've had to make some hard decisions, some sacrifices, to ensure Martha's well-being and to secure her future. It's a heavy burden, but one we bear out of love." She gestured vaguely towards me, where I sat quietly, almost imperceptibly, in a corner chair, observing their performance. I met her eyes, and she quickly looked away, a flicker of unease crossing her features. They continued, painting a picture of selfless devotion, of sacrificing their own time and resources to look after their poor, confused mother. They spoke of the immense burden, the financial strain, subtly hinting at the need to transfer my assets to their control for better management and to protect me from myself. They even had a notary public present, a stern-faced man I didn't recognize, sitting at a small table, ready to validate any documents they presented, lending an air of official legitimacy to their deceit. I watched them, my jaw tight, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, a quiet storm brewing within me. A part of me still ached for the son I once knew, the boy who would cling to my hand, his face bright with innocent joy. But that boy was gone, replaced by this cold, calculating stranger, this manipulative schemer. The pain was still there, a dull throb, but it was overshadowed by a fierce, unyielding resolve. Just as Robert was about to pull out some documents, presumably the ones for me to sign, the front door swung open with a soft click. A collective gasp rippled through the room as all heads turned. I stood in the doorway, not the frail, confused old woman they expected. I was dressed simply but elegantly, my silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, my posture straight, my eyes clear and unwavering. By my side stood Elizabeth Thorne, her presence commanding attention, her tailored suit and sharp gaze radiating competence. Behind us, Ms. Evans, my art teacher, a vibrant woman with an artist's smock still visible under her coat, and Mr. Henderson, the calm, respected director of the community center, also entered, their quiet support a palpable force. Their presence, my newfound allies, lent me an invisible armor, fortifying my spirit. A profound hush fell over the room. You could hear the nervous shifting in chairs, the intake of breath. Robert's face, which had been beaming with self-satisfaction and false sincerity, now tightened into a mask of disbelief, then horror. Sandra's eyes widened, a flicker of raw panic in their depths, her carefully constructed composure beginning to crack. I walked directly to the center of the room, my gaze unwavering as I met Robert's eyes. He looked away first, his gaze flickering nervously, unable to hold my steady stare. "Robert, Sandra," I said, my voice clear and steady, amplified by the sudden, expectant silence, "you've been doing a lot of talking about my future. But you seem to have forgotten one crucial detail. Elizabeth Thorne stepped forward, holding a crisp, official-looking folder. Her voice, calm and authoritative, cut through the tension. "Good afternoon, everyone," she announced, her voice resonating with quiet power. "My name is Elizabeth Thorne, and I represent Mrs. Martha Wilson." Gasps erupted. Whispers filled the air, louder now, more agitated. Robert's face paled, then flushed scarlet. Sandra's jaw dropped, her eyes darting frantically between me and Elizabeth. "Robert and Sandra Wilson have convened this meeting under false pretenses," Elizabeth continued, her voice unwavering, each word a hammer blow. "They have made numerous allegations regarding Mrs. Wilson's mental competency and financial management abilities. However, we are here today to present the truth." She opened her folder, pulling out a thick stack of documents. "First," she stated, her voice devoid of emotion, "we have irrefutable evidence of unauthorized access to Mrs. Wilson's bank accounts, along with numerous fraudulent transactions." She projected copies of bank statements onto the screen Robert had set up, highlighting large, suspicious withdrawals and transfers, clearly marked with dates and amounts. "These withdrawals," she explained, her voice gaining momentum, total over $200,000, money that was part of Mrs. Wilson's life savings, meticulously built over decades, intended for her retirement and medical care. The money was apparently used to cover Mr. Robert Wilson's personal debts, including substantial gambling losses, and his wife's extravagant shopping habits, as evidenced by these credit card statements. Robert tried to interrupt, his voice a strangled croak. "That's a lie. My mother is confused. She—" "Silence, Mr. Wilson," Elizabeth cut him off, her voice like steel, leaving no room for argument. "You will have your turn in court. For now, you will listen." She then held up a magnified image on the screen, a blown-up section of a legal document. "Furthermore, we have obtained a forensic analysis report from a certified handwriting expert, confirming that Mrs. Wilson's signature has been expertly forged on several key legal documents, including a power of attorney and a revised will that would have transferred all of Mrs. Wilson's assets, including this very home and her entire inheritance, to Mr. and Mrs. Wilson upon her passing, completely disinheriting her other beneficiaries and charities." A collective murmur of shock and outrage went through the room. Relatives started looking at Robert and Sandra with undisguised horror and disgust. Susan, my sister, sank deeper into her chair, her face ashen, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and dawning realization. Then, Elizabeth revealed the ultimate weapon. She held up a small, old cell phone, its screen glowing faintly. "And finally," she said, her eyes fixed on Robert and Sandra, her voice dropping to a chilling whisper that somehow carried through the entire room, "we have this." She connected the phone to the projector, and the audio recording from Alex's phone, raw and undeniable, filled the room. Robert's voice, clear and cold, chillingly casual, already signed, Sandra. "I forged her signature on the power of attorney last month. She'll never know. She's too out of it. And that little piece of land? We'll just quietly transfer it over, sell it off. She's too old to remember that. It's just a formality now. The house, the money, everything. It's all ours. We can finally pay off that divorce settlement and get you that promotion you've been wanting." Sandra's voice, smug and sharp, a chillingly cold edge to her tone, "Good. And make sure Mom's funeral arrangements are simple. Nothing extravagant. We don't want any unnecessary expenses. We need that inheritance to cover our own debts and to finally get us that new house. No fuss, no drama. Just quick and clean." The room fell into a stunned, horrified silence. You could hear a pin drop. The chilling words about my funeral, about their desire for my inheritance, about their cold calculation of my demise, hung in the air like a poisonous cloud, suffocating every last shred of decency. Robert and Sandra's faces went from pale to ghastly, then to a mottled red. Robert's jaw hung open, his eyes wide with terror, utterly speechless. Sandra let out a choked cry, her hand flying to her mouth, her body trembling uncontrollably. Their carefully constructed facade, their elaborate charade, crumbled into dust, revealing the ugly, monstrous truth beneath. This recording, Elizabeth announced, her voice unwavering, was provided by an anonymous source within the family, deeply troubled by the actions they witnessed. She glanced briefly, almost imperceptibly, at Alex, who sat frozen, his small face etched with a mixture of fear and shame, but also a quiet, nascent courage. Sarah, however, looked up, a glimmer of pride in her eyes as she squeezed Alex's hand under the table, a silent acknowledgement of his bravery. Furthermore, Elizabeth continued, turning to the notary public, who is now sweating profusely, Mr. Davies, I believe you are here today to notarize documents for Mr. and Mrs. Wilson. Are you aware that these documents are based on fraudulent claims and forged signatures, and that assisting them would make you complicit in criminal acts, facing severe legal repercussions? The notary, clearly rattled to his core, stammered, his face white. No, I wasn't aware. I won't proceed. I had no idea. He quickly packed his bag, almost tripping over his own feet in his haste to distance himself from the unfolding disaster. Then, Ms. Evans, my art teacher, stepped forward, her artistic spirit radiating quiet strength. I have Martha in my art class, she stated, her voice calm but firm, addressing the room. She is one of my brightest, most attentive students. Her mind is sharp, her creativity boundless. Any suggestion of her being incapacitated is utterly false and frankly, insulting. Mr. Henderson, the community center director, added his voice, his steady presence a calming force. Martha has been an active and valued member of our community. She started a new gardening club, even offered to lead a painting workshop. She is fully capable of managing her own affairs, and she is a vibrant, intelligent woman. Robert finally found his voice, a strangled, desperate sound, like an animal caught in a trap. Mom! This is a mistake. You're being manipulated. This lawyer is lying. She's trying to destroy our family. He lunged forward, his eyes wild, but Elizabeth Thorne calmly stepped in front of me, shielding me with her body, her gaze unwavering. Sandra, meanwhile, shrieked, her composure completely gone. Robert! You idiot! You said you covered everything. This is all your fault. You ruined us. She began to cry hysterically, pointing fingers, her voice cracking. The perfect facade of their marriage cracked, then shattered, revealing the ugly, resentful truth beneath. I watched them, my heart heavy but also incredibly clear. There was no joy in their downfall, only a profound sadness for what had been lost, for the son I had nurtured, for the family that had been poisoned by greed. But beneath that sadness was an unyielding sense of justice, a quiet triumph. This was not revenge, this was reclamation. I stepped forward, past Elizabeth, facing Robert and Sandra directly, their faces contorted with fear and despair. Robert, I said, my voice steady, imbued with a quiet power. I loved you more than anything. I gave you my entire life. My every breath was for you. And you tried to bury me alive for your own gain. You tried to erase me, to make me disappear. My gaze drifted to Sandra, who cowered behind Robert. And you, Sandra, you fueled his greed, thinking you could simply step into my life, my home, my legacy, as if I were nothing but an obstacle. But I'm still here, I continued, my voice gaining strength, resonating through the shocked silence. This house is mine. My life is mine. And my values, the values Arthur and I built this family on, honesty, integrity, love, are not for sale. They are not for you to trample on. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by Sandra's ragged sobs. Robert and Sandra stood there, defeated, exposed, their faces etched with shame and terror. The power dynamic had shifted completely. The predators were now the prey, stripped bare of their deceit. I looked at my other family members, their faces a mixture of shock, guilt, and dawning understanding. Some had tears in their eyes. Susan wouldn't meet my gaze, her head bowed in shame. Elizabeth, I said, turning to my lawyer, a silent acknowledgement of her brilliant work, I believe we've made our case. Elizabeth nodded, her expression grim but resolute. Indeed. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, you have a substantial lawsuit against you. And based on the evidence presented today, the police will also be notified of your criminal activities. Expect to hear from them very soon. Robert and Sandra, broken and humiliated, could only stumble out of my house, their dreams of ill-gotten gains shattered, their future uncertain. Alex and Sarah, however, did not follow their parents. Alex, looking utterly devastated, tentatively approached me, his small hand reaching for mine, his eyes pleading. Sarah, tears streaming down her face, threw her arms around me, clinging tightly. Grandma, she whispered, her voice choked with sobs, I'm so sorry. I tried to warn you. I tried. I held them close, my own tears finally falling, not from pain, but from overwhelming relief and the tender embrace of genuine, unconditional love. The battle was won. And I was finally, truly free. The aftermath of that day was a whirlwind of legal proceedings, emotional reckoning, and a profound sense of liberation. Robert and Sandra, facing overwhelming evidence and the very real threat of criminal charges, had no choice but to concede. The lawsuit against me was swiftly settled in my favor, and they were ordered to repay the substantial sum of money they had stolen, though Elizabeth warned me it would take time, perhaps years, for them to fully compensate me. Robert lost his job, his once impressive salary gone, his career in finance utterly ruined. His company had a strict code of conduct, and the scandal, once it hit the local news and spread through the industry, was undeniable and irreparable. Sandra's carefully cultivated social circles quickly evaporated, her friends abandoning her as quickly as she had abandoned me. Their once comfortable, lavish life crumbled under the crushing weight of their own greed, legal fees, and mounting debts. They were forced to sell their expensive, designer-furnished apartment, losing a significant portion of their remaining assets, and moved into a small, rented house on the outskirts of town, a stark contrast to the life they had envisioned for themselves, funded by my inheritance. Their grand plans had backfired spectacularly, leaving them with nothing but disgrace, financial ruin, and the bitter taste of public humiliation. My sister, Susan, initially tried to apologize, her voice laced with shame and regret. She came to my house a week after the meeting, her shoulders slumped, her eyes red-rimmed. She confessed that Robert had given her a significant sum of money, promising her a larger share of my estate once they managed it, once I was out of the picture. She admitted she had been weak, tempted by the money, and had allowed herself to be manipulated into spreading lies about me. I listened, my heart aching with a complex mix of sadness and disappointment. I told her I forgave her, that I understood the allure of temptation, but that trust was a fragile thing, easily broken, and incredibly difficult to rebuild. Our relationship, once close, forged by shared childhood memories and family bonds, would likely never be the same. The bond of sisterhood had been frayed, almost severed, by greed and deception, a painful truth to accept, but one I had to face. But amidst the wreckage of my old life, new life began to sprout, vibrant and resilient. My home, once a battlefield, slowly, lovingly, transformed back into my sanctuary, a reflection of my reclaimed self. I started by systematically removing every last trace of Robert and Sandra's intrusions. The cold gray paint was stripped away, replaced by warm, inviting tones of cream and soft blue, colors that reminded me of the ocean and peaceful skies. The impersonal, modern furniture they had brought in was sold, and I painstakingly found vintage pieces that echoed Arthur's taste, that resonated with my own cherished memories, each one holding a story. My art, once a forgotten dream, now adorned the walls, vibrant landscapes, delicate floral studies, expressive portraits of my grandchildren, each painting a testament to my rebirth, my renewed passion. My grandmother's porcelain doll, which I eventually found tucked away in a dusty box in the garage, was lovingly restored and given pride of place on the mantelpiece. Sarah and Alex became constant visitors, their presence filling my home with genuine warmth and laughter. Sarah, deeply affected by her parents' actions and the public exposure, sought solace and understanding in my presence. We spent hours talking, sharing stories, painting together in my sunlit studio, her own artistic talent blossoming under my guidance. She confessed her fears, her shame for her parents, but also her profound relief that the truth had finally come out, that I was safe. I reassured her that her worth was not tied to her parents' mistakes, that she was her own person, capable of making her own choices. Alex, initially quiet and withdrawn, slowly began to open up, his innocent eyes still holding a hint of lingering sadness. He expressed remorse for his parents' actions, though he was too young to fully grasp the gravity of their crimes. I praised his bravery in providing the recording, telling him he had done the right thing, that honesty always wins, even when it's hard. We spent countless afternoons in the garden, planting new flowers, tending to the roses Arthur had loved, their fragrant blooms a symbol of hope. His tiny, courageous act of leaving the phone had saved me, and now, I was helping him find his own path, teaching him the importance of integrity and courage. My art class at the community center became my second home, a vibrant hub of creativity and connection. Ms. Evans, my wonderful art teacher, encouraged me to explore new techniques, to experiment with bold colors and abstract forms. I found incredible joy in creation, a sense of purpose and fulfillment that had been missing for decades. The other women in the class, many of them widows or dealing with their own complex family struggles, looked to me with newfound respect and admiration. My story, once a private agony, became a source of quiet inspiration, a testament to resilience. I started sharing my experiences, not with bitterness or anger, but with a sense of profound healing and hard-won wisdom. One day, after an art class, Mr. Henderson, the calm and respected community center director, approached me. "Martha," he said, his voice warm, "your story has resonated with so many women here. We've had numerous inquiries. Would you consider leading a small workshop, perhaps on reclaiming your narrative or finding your voice after betrayal?" I was hesitant at first. Me? Teach? Lead a workshop? The idea felt daunting, exposing. But then I thought of all the women who had come to me, whispering their own tales of ungrateful children, manipulative in-laws, unfaithful husbands. Women who had given their all, only to be dismissed, exploited, or betrayed. Women who needed to hear that it was possible to fight back, to find their voice, to live fully again. Many spoke of painful divorce settlements that had left them penniless and heartbroken, others of grown children demanding their entire salary or pension to support their lavish lifestyles, leaving their parents destitute. Some recounted heart-wrenching custody battles over grandchildren, where they were denied access by vindictive parents. Many expressed deep regrets about not seeking a lawyer sooner, about allowing themselves to be controlled by fear and false promises. Their stories mirrored mine in so many ways. I agreed. The workshops were an unexpected success, overflowing with eager participants. I spoke from the heart, sharing my vulnerability, my pain, and ultimately, my triumph. I talked about the insidious nature of emotional and financial manipulation, the importance of setting boundaries, of recognizing the subtle signs of betrayal, and of the immense courage it takes to stand up for yourself, even against those you love most. I saw tears in the eyes of many women, but also a fierce light of recognition, of shared understanding, a spark of hope. They shared their own stories, creating a powerful, empathetic community of resilience and mutual support. We discussed everything from navigating difficult family conversations to seeking legal counsel, from rebuilding finances to finding new passions. My relationship with Mrs. Bennett deepened into a cherished friendship. We'd sit on her porch, sipping iced tea, sharing quiet moments of reflection and laughter. She told me more about her own fight, how she had to protect her small inheritance from her nephew who claimed she was too old and frail to manage it. Her experience gave me strength when I needed it most, a constant reminder that I was not alone, that others had walked this path and emerged stronger. Life was not without its quiet moments of loneliness. There were evenings when the house, once filled with the imagined laughter of a thriving family, felt vast and empty. I sometimes missed the younger Robert, the innocent boy who would run to me with open arms, his face alight with joy. But those moments were fleeting, quickly replaced by a profound sense of peace, independence, and self-worth. I was free. Free from the burden of expectation, free from the constant fear of betrayal, free from the suffocating weight of others' demands. I was the master of my own life, my own schedule, my own dreams. I started a small blog, Martha's Garden of Resilience, chronicling my journey, sharing my art, and offering words of encouragement and practical advice to other women. The reach was small at first, but it grew steadily, organically. Other women, from all over the country, began commenting, sharing their own stories, finding solace and inspiration in my words. The community I built extended far beyond the walls of my art class, reaching into the digital world, connecting souls who had felt isolated and alone. One warm evening, a year after the gathering, I sat in my renovated living room, a soft lamp casting a gentle glow over my journal. Sarah and Alex were staying with me for the weekend, their soft snores drifting from the guest room, a comforting sound of innocent sleep. The house felt alive, filled not with the ghosts of betrayal, but with the vibrant energy of new beginnings, genuine love, and the quiet hum of a life truly lived. I picked up my pen and began to write, my hand steady, my heart full. For so long, I thought my worth came from what I gave others, from the endless sacrifices I made for my family, for Robert. I believed that love meant enduring, that I had to put everyone else's needs and desires before my own, even if it meant diminishing myself. I convinced myself that accepting injustice, that silently bearing the weight of ingratitude, was just part of being a good mother, a good person, a good woman. But this journey, this agonizing crucible of betrayal and resilience, has taught me a profound lesson, etched deep into my soul. A person's worth is not defined by how others perceive them, by the titles they hold, or by the sacrifices they make. It is, ultimately, defined by how they perceive themselves, by the strength they find within. Kindness is a strength, yes, a powerful force for good, but being a doormat is not kindness. It is self-neglect. I learned that the hard way. I learned that sometimes, to protect yourself, your dignity, and the values you know you deserve, you have to fight. Not with hatred, not with bitterness, but with unwavering truth and quiet courage. The line between forgiveness and enablement is dangerously thin. I learned to draw that line with a firm hand, to set boundaries, to love myself fiercely and unconditionally before I could truly love others in a healthy, sustainable way. I am no longer the Martha of the past, the one who merely existed to give, to serve, to be defined by her roles. I am the Martha of the present, the one who knows how to nurture, how to create, how to fight, and how to live fully for herself. I didn't disappear. I finally emerged, blooming in my own garden, standing tall and rooted in my own truth, radiating a quiet strength I never knew I possessed. And I will never, ever, go away. I am finally here. I closed the journal, a profound sense of peace settling over me, warm and comforting like a soft blanket. The fight had been long, the wound steep, but the victory was sweet, earned through resilience, self-discovery, and the unwavering strength of a woman who refused to disappear. I looked around my beautiful, peaceful home. My home. My life. My choice.